don't know, I think there's times where I've played it safe, that looking back, I would probably take like more risks maybe along the way. And I don't know exactly like where they would have been, but I would encourage people, like if there's opportunity, like look for opportunities more. And if they're not coming to you, go find them. And I think that I probably should have been going to find more opportunities along the way.
Welcome to Pareja Unfiltered, Wendy. I'm super excited to have you on. You're someone I've gotten to know pretty well over the last year, and you have a story that I don't think most people have heard. So I know you are our CMO, and that's what you're most known for, from your handle to how the industry perceives you. But I also want to dive into your leadership journey from the beginning. So let's start it off where most people, I think, don't quite know, which is a very similar origin story to me. But I want you to kick it off and take us back to, I think, college, whenever you came across our crazy industry.
Thanks, Leo. Excited to be here. So it's a long story, but similar to yours. Started in real estate when I was in college. At the encouragement of my dad, I was studying to get a business degree and had a very sort of logical path that I had figured out. I was going to be a CPA, so started college to study accounting. Got into my second year and was taking all of the fun accounting courses, taxation, and all of those things.
Where was this?
In Nova Scotia, Canada.
Okay.
That's where I was born and raised. And I had one elective in sort of that core second year of college, and that was a marketing elective. And I really liked that class and became like really interested in the sort of the creative side of that, and had a great professor, and it really just like it clicked. And went to my dad and I was like, Dad, like I think I want to change my major. I don't see like the rest of my life being an accountant. That's just really not what I want to do, stuck in sort of spreadsheets and numbers. And he was like, okay, well, what would you do with an accounting degree at the end of graduation? I was like, I don't know. I want to be a business person. And my family is a family of entrepreneurs. My dad has run a new home construction business. My stepmom had several businesses. So it's that entrepreneurship was kind of in my DNA. So he was like, okay, great. Like that sounds good. A few weeks later, I was getting sort of close to summer break, and he had just opened up a new development. And I mentioned he was in construction and did sort of custom, still does to this day, custom new build homes. And he had built a spec home, and like most developers, was unhappy with his current real estate agent that he was working with. So he came to me and he said, I was thinking, if you want to, be in marketing, if you want to be a business person, you should learn how to be a salesperson, because any good business person needs to be a good salesperson. And, I've got this spec house that we are just finishing. So why don't you go get your real estate license, and you can sit in the spec house, do open houses all summer. And if you just sell one house during the summer, you'll earn more money than you will at your summer job. And you'll learn if you can be a good salesperson. And those will be invaluable skills for you as a business person.
So that you were 20, 21?
Yeah. So back then, you could go buy a course. You could buy the real estate pre-licensing course and challenge the exam, and they would give you a real estate license.
You didn't even have to do the hours.
You didn't even have to do the hours. Yeah. So literally sort of like over the course of, call it a week, basically a weekend, I went and bought the course, studied, challenged the exam, and was given a real estate license. And I was able to go out and sell real estate.
Well, how did that summer go?
That summer went really well. I sold open houses, or I sold a lot of houses. I did open houses the entire summer. First couple weeks, I had no idea what I was doing.
And pause. Had you graduated college yet, or were you?
No, this was second year of college. So I finished
So
sort
our
of
stories
summer
are
break.
identical.
Yeah. So finished, like it was the summer break. So like
Okay.
classes wrapped up sort of end of April, into May. So yeah, like I just started doing the open houses. The first couple weeks, I'd like talked to people, had no idea what I was doing. Joined the local office, which was the office that he was working with the agents there. The agents in the office, as you can imagine, I'm this sort of young 20-something on college summer break, but really wanted nothing to do with me. But luckily there was one or two that gave me some tips along the way, and I got some books and sort of fumbled my way through things, and I got to go to a training, which was invaluable. And one of the things that I learned at this training was about the expired listing books. And I got the scripts to call expired listings. And in the office was just like rows of bookshelves of expired listings. And so I took these books and I just started calling while I was sitting at the open houses at the spec house. And I just started calling expired listings and booking listing appointments. And then I learned what a listing presentation was supposed to be. And then I started putting together listing presentations. And then I learned that if I could book, 3 listing appointments a day, and then I learned sort of all the math, right? That if I could like book the appointments, I'd get a certain amount that would like confirm and that would show up. And then I just started working the numbers, and ended up like that year being the rookie of the year. And
So you started in May. How many houses did you close that first year?
just over 100.
That is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in the franchise company that we were with that year. I was International Rookie Listing Agent of the Year. It's the little trophy that I still have to this day.
Because I think I sold 11 and I was killing it. So you 10x'd my first year.
It was working that expired listing system was key to that.
Did you graduate college?
Yes. Went back to college in the fall, finished my degree, and still kept selling. And just
So
same thing,
did
just
you
kept
ever
selling.
even consider getting a normal job, or you went
No.
right into sales?
No, and it was interesting because my peers, were graduating college and like going to their internships either at Arthur Andersen or McKinsey or whatever they were doing, and Grant Thornton, like those that stayed sort of on the accounting track. And they were sort of poo-pooing me, right? Like, you're gonna sell real estate? I was like making really good money. And I remember like, just like, yes, I'm gonna sell real estate, but almost feeling a little self-conscious about it. But yes, so I never considered a real job, as you said, but I had a real job. I was working my butt off.
Oh, no, I get it. I was curious if because I've met folks who got their license and then said, well, I need to go do what like society says to do. But you just went right into entrepreneurship with that.
I went right into entrepreneurship with that, yes. And in Nova Scotia, where I'm from and where I started selling, you had to sell with your salesperson's license for 2 years before you could get your broker's license. And you needed your broker's license in order to own your own brokerage. So that was a goal I set very quickly, because one of the things that happened is I was working as a salesperson for sort of a small satellite office of a larger brokerage. And the owners of the larger brokerage, when I started doing so well, sort of came to me and said, like, oh, you're doing really well. Why don't you start managing our sort of satellite office for us? So my father, who's been a great business mentor to me, said, well, look, they want you to grow their business. It's never a great idea to grow somebody else's business if you don't have a stake in it. He said, so like, let's make sure you get a stake in it. So he helped me sort of negotiate with them that I had an option to sort of buy that satellite office.
Oh, wow.
So we worked that out, and when I was able to get my broker's license, which I needed to buy that, I bought that business
As a franchisee?
as a franchisee.
Oh, that's
So I
good.
became.
See, this is the part of the story I don't know. I like this. I like this.
Yeah, so I became, at that time, the youngest brokerage owner in the province of Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. This is
So keep
fascinating.
going, yeah. So I was, I was like in my mid-20s at that time, and was a franchisee of Realty World was the franchise company, and started the brokerage. We were a small brokerage, like under 10 agents at the time. When we sort of broke off from the larger company that was part of a satellite office. So then my job became to build that brokerage company. So that was a huge awakening, because then I went from selling to now like that full shift.
Did you maintain any sales practice, or you just went full on transition into brokerage owner?
I mean, it's the classic story. I had to maintain production because somebody had to pay the bills. That was my production that had to pay the bills. But I had to go through that shift of how do I produce, and then how do I grow and, bring on agents, and then also like find agents who will produce. So let me paint the picture, right? It is the late 90s. I am a female in my late 20s, mid to late 20s, in a small town, somewhat rural Canada. There is not a middle-aged realtor who is predominantly male who's coming to work at my startup real estate brokerage. So I had to solve that problem, and I had to solve it really quickly. So for me, that solve was to develop my own pre-licensing training.
Oh, wow.
So like
not everybody else could challenge like you could.
Well, they could. That was the solve. So they could. So I built my own pre-licensing training, and I said, you don't want to go pay for the real estate training course, a pre-licensing course. Come take Wendy's pre-licensing course. I won't charge you anything, but sign a letter of intent that you'll come work at my brokerage. Mm. So I gave the pre-licensing course, which you could do, took them through, got them licensed, and then developed my own training course to get them from starting to their first transaction. And that's how I built sort of my brokerage.
And you went from how many agents?
From, call it like 6 roughly, when like sort of I took over from sort of day one, up to when I sold to the business, 46.
And that's amazing.
And that was the course of like about 6 years.
And you sold to Parent Co?
I sold to another independent in the community who took over the franchise and stayed with the franchise.
And then you
and then
south?
I stayed for a year, so I like stayed around to make sure that everything was good through the transition. But part of the acquisition was immediately. At that time, Realty World was acquired. The master franchise was acquired by Royal LePage, so they had to approve the franchise transition. So immediately during that conversation, the conversation became, what's next for you? And part of the reason that I wanted to, or made the decision to sell the business, was sort of the what's next. And there was, some trigger events along the way that led to that decision. But then I had the opportunity to go sort of work on the corporate side, and joined Royal LePage.
And how was that in your mid to late 20s?
The sale or the transition? The transition to the corporate side was very interesting, because I had always, at that point, I'd never been an employee, right? I'd sort of gone through college and gone right into sort of the entrepreneurial side of things. Definitely a transition. So I've always kind of thought of myself, though, as an entrepreneur, even though since then, I've sort of made my career in the last sort of 20 plus years inside of the corporate world. I still think of myself as that entrepreneur. And even you and I working together in the last year, like, both of us, I think, still have that entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, I don't have another frame of reference
Yeah.
to look at the world. And so how did you end up meeting Sherry Chris and launching Better Homes and Garden? And, because you've had this crazy epic arc in this space.
So that was, so when I sold my franchise through Royal LePage, so when I went to work at Royal LePage, Sherry and I met there. So we met at Royal LePage in Toronto. Sherry worked there. Subsequently, Sherry left there, came to the US, and then Sherry recruited me to join her in the US when she was launching Better Homes and Gardens. So that's how I came here to the US and made that transition.
And how has someone like Sherry, and fill in the blank, because you and I have been very candid about this with female leaders and mentors, and how, we've had conversations about, women have not been as good at mentoring each other from your vantage point. But Sherry's been what has been a good mentor for you. And talk to me about how that's been such a pivotal role in your experience.
Yeah, I mean, women are harder on women. So, Sherry was a tough mentor and a tough boss. And, she was probably harder on me than I think she was on any of the men that ever worked for her. And she has high standards for herself, and she has high standards for particularly the females around her, because she knows like it takes a lot and women are judged differently. And, that has always been the way that it has been. And yeah.
What is a lesson learned? You've been on the corporate side and on the entrepreneur side as a female leader that you would give to women that has proven and worked for you?
I think early on in my career, especially coming to the corporate side of the world, I think it's very easy to look at your male colleagues and feel like you need to try to lead and behave like you see they are. And then when you do that, you become labeled and you become judged in a negative way. So an example of that is a male can be assertive and it is seen as a positive leadership attribute. When a female is assertive in a similar way, it is seen as that female being difficult and being hard to work with, and oftentimes getting other sort of negative labels attached to them. So it's very challenging to navigate that. And it's very then challenging to figure out, well, then how do I get my ideas put forward? How do I
unpack that? Like, how do you navigate? I mean, you've done it very successfully.
I think that sometimes it takes then like more time. And I would say that if you knew me 20 years ago, you may not say I've done it successfully. Like it's taken time to learn that. So if I go back to when I first joined Royal LePage in my corporate role, I actually had coaching. I actually got feedback. I was fortunate enough I got an executive coach, because the feedback I got was like, Wendy, you can't come into a situation and steamroll this, right? You've got to slow this down. You've got to explain to people why, right? Why you're asking of certain things, why you're thinking certain ways. So it's a learned skill.
I would say that that's a relatable just leadership arc, right? I think your story actually is very comparable to the most entrepreneurial arc, where you're a good doer, right? If Michael Gerber's E-Myth actually talks about being the practitioner who has an entrepreneurial fit. and they look at their boss like, I can do this better than them, and you end up in management or leadership, whether you start your own or you get promoted, and all of a sudden you're managing people, and most people have never had training. Like executive coaching is something that most people don't even receive. And so I've witnessed and I've experienced where at the beginning it was like, I'm the boss because I'm sitting in the seat,
Right.
and you just bark orders or instructions, and you don't realize you have to go on this total leadership journey on communication and how you're received and asking questions. And in my experience, good leaders just ask questions and draw stuff out of people. Right. But again, that's 20 years in, because
Yes.
I tried the other stuff as well and it didn't really work. So I'd love to know how, and then you've had this super interesting career arc where, chief strategy officer, president, you've sat in almost all the seats and seen all the vantage points from small independent to taking something public. I want to know about all that, because that's like, I haven't done that, right? Like I now run a public company, but you actually took one public. Tell me any of those high points, low points. Again, like I opened with, you're known as a CMO, but I don't even want to talk about that. Like this part of the journey is a part I wanted to pull out and have people
Let's
hear.
talk about the IPO, because that's a fun story. So had the opportunity to work with Fathom for, I think it was there like 4 years, almost 5 years. And the IPO was really the highlight of that. And it was one of the things that was on my career bucket list, as a lot of people have that, right, is to be part of an IPO. So I think I started working with them in 2019. They were on the path to go towards the IPO. We were the first, 100% transaction fee company in the real estate vertical to go public. So that was very much at sort of that point in history. There was a lot of attention from the market for that. So we were working towards making that happen, going into sort of the end of 2019, going into all of the, investment meetings, all the banker meetings, all the prep that goes into making that happen, go into the first part of 2020. The business is going well, growth is going well, all of that is going well. Going into February, going into March, beginning of March, we're on track for sort of 1st of April IPO. March 2020 happens. The pandemic hits. The world shuts down. Everything is on hold. All of that work, like we were ready to go, it is put on hold. So, you can imagine a business that has built up. And you don't just decide to go public. Like it is, years essentially of work that goes into that. And from the financial side of the business, like there is a lot of accounting work that goes into place to kind of make that happen for it to go. It is all on hold, and there is a window of time before it all has to be done again. And we're in that, like, the world is shut down. And everything is uncertain, right? We didn't know, like, what was going to happen in our business. So it was a very interesting time. And, the leadership team is completely remote, right? It's a virtual company. Like we're all in our home offices all across the country, wondering what is going to happen, trying to look after the agents. Like it was a really interesting time to be a leader, as it was in all of, our companies in the industry. So we get through, kind of the disappointment of, wow, like we're not going to go public after all of this work. Plus, we're in a pandemic. Are we safe? Are our families okay? How do we lead the agents? Like there was a lot going through there. So it was an interesting time there were a lot of learnings through that. Go through April, go through May, still don't know, go through, June. Could this happen? There are no IPOs happening during that time. Finally, July, we go public. and it's all virtual. We do the road show virtual. We do the ringing of the bell virtual. It's like we're on the phone, on the floor. They prep us and they're like, look, you're going to hear a lot of yelling. You're going to hear probably some like curse words. You're going to hear some things that like might seem alarming. All you can do is listen, and it is what it is. And like, congratulations, like you'll be a publicly traded company, hopefully, at the end. And all of that happened. And then you heard like, okay, like, ring the bell and, congratulations. And then they opened the market and the company was public. So it was a very interesting exercise to go through. And of course, then you see the ebbs and flows of
Now you're public.
of what happens after you're a publicly traded company. And
I've talked to startup founders that say, what's it like to run a public company? It's like, be careful what you wish for.
yeah,
You are
it
now
is
subject to a lot more
certainly
scrutiny.
it's a different, very different to be on the other side of that, from being sort of managing a private company to a public company. But doing all of that virtually was crazy, like especially those virtual road shows, because you're just like on Zoom meetings from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, sort of talking into the screen, answering the questions, and then rinse and repeat to the next one. But for me, the biggest takeaway from that was what I've always loved about the different opportunities that I've had in the business is learning different sides of the business. So I learned like how the investors think about the business, and you learn just a whole other element of
It's a whole nother language.
It's a whole other language, right? And it's a whole other sort of talk track. It's a whole other like messaging of the business. And like when we do investor calls now, right? Like that's a very different, you say it to the agents all the time. When you're talking to investors, you're talking about different things than when we're talking to our agent stakeholders, than, when we're talking to buyers or sellers.
So you just said that each chapter's had a different like learning. What's been since you joined eXp?
One of the key things with eXp, and this is from the marketing perspective, is eXp is full of marketers. Our agents are influencers in their own rights, and they are marketers that are brand builders that have been building brand in their communities. So when they think of what we do from a brand perspective, they have very high expectations of us. So like the brand team, the marketing team has to really like up the game for them, because they have game themselves. And that's very different from any of the other brands that I have worked with. At the other companies that I have worked with, the level of expertise and the level of branding and marketing understanding from the agents is very different. It's more like, well, I market my listings. At eXp, the agents here are marketing their brands and they're building brands, not just marketing listings. And that is super, super impactful and very different.
Any part of the journey that, because again, I always talk about everyone sees a polished version, and I'm pretty public about my failures and losing big chunks of money and crying in fetal position and all that stuff, because that's how I am.
Yeah.
What parts of your journey would you want to share with someone listening? Because again, like an entrepreneur who's in the beginning stages see a finished product and they're like, oh, I'm not getting it. It's like, no, that's probably the most important parts of the journey.
Yeah, I think I think there's times where I've played it safe, that looking back, I would probably take like more risks maybe along the way. and I don't know exactly like where they would have been, but I would encourage people, like, if there's opportunity, like, look for opportunities more. And if they're not coming to you, go find them. And I think that I probably should have been going to find more opportunities along the way. So that's like something that I would encourage people to do, is like go push yourself to find the
Can you give a
opportunities.
description of one that you would have, like,
Yeah.
hypothetically, like, is it joining a startup, starting something? Like, what does that sentence mean to you?
Yeah, like I think it's just like going, like asking to get in the rooms. Like I hear that in our circles that we're in now, is I wish I would have asked to get in more rooms earlier on in my career. I saw rooms often that I probably at the time didn't feel like I belonged there.
And
That
that was in your head.
that was in my head, that I never and looking back, it never even occurred to me to ask to be in the room, where now, sort of in hindsight, I wish somebody would have even nudged me to say, you could ask, go ask. But nobody ever like told me, and I never told myself, right, to go ask to be in the room. So that is definitely like, today, one of the things I love is I'm seeing that more. I'm seeing it be like more like, no, just ask. Like, you can be told no and it's
Yeah.
okay, right? But go ask. So it's definitely something that like I would like just ask. Get in that room and go ask.
No, that's a great one, and I always go to, like, what's the worst thing that can happen, right?
Yes.
You're told no.
Yes. But I do think we've become I hope we're becoming, but I say that, but I think that I'm saying that from the vantage point that I'm at now. It's a different vantage point than 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So when I think of especially women starting out in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, it is very different.
So vantage point, are you talking about the 90s versus 2025, or are you talking about being a 20-year-old versus being a
Yeah, I think from
confident?
an age perspective. Yeah.
And so what mental frame should you encourage women in their 20s to look through
I
with the
think
wisdom you got now?
Yeah, I think the mental frame is ask, right? Like, ask to get in the room. I don't think that I think the challenges have not changed from the 2010, 2020. Like, I don't think that time frame has really changed the challenges that females face. So I think that in 2025, whether you're a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old, you're still facing similar challenges that I faced when I was in like my age, sort of coming up for that. So my encouragement would be like, look for those opportunities and then ask.
And so mentorship
Yeah.
and those opportunities are a very important thread for you. What would you seek out, or what would you encourage someone in their 20s to seek out in any form of mentoring relationship?
So I think more than a mentor, I would encourage females to seek out a sponsor. And I think
Describe that.
the difference between that is, a sponsor is somebody that helps you get the opportunity. A mentor is somebody that might help you sort of prepare, right? So a mentor is sort of like, it maybe helps you coach and helps you sort of get ready for the opportunity. A sponsor puts you in front of the person. The sponsor says, Wendy, meet Leo. I'm going to like introduce you to Leo. I'm going to set up a meeting with Leo. I'm going to make sure you know Leo. I'm going to make sure Leo knows you. I'm going to make sure Leo knows why you are great and that, you should be considered for this opportunity. That's something a sponsor does, right? A mentor is a very different type of relationship.
And as a sponsor, someone in the same industry, in the same company, in the same room, like how would you, because I don't think I've ever had someone describe that like that, which is really well put. So I really want to unpack that for people.
Yeah, a sponsor is, yes, all of those things, but not necessarily, right? A sponsor could be somebody outside of your industry, but has the right connections, right? A sponsor could be adjacent to our industry, but has the connections. So it's somebody that has connections and is willing to use those connections to open up doors and get opportunities for you.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. Wendy, I've so enjoyed getting to know you, and what I get to watch you continue to lead is super impressive. Thank you for spending some time with me today.
Thank you so much.